Hello, and welcome to Bruce Mackey's Library. I'm your host, Mix Lucy, and today we are here with a bonus episode before we do the Degrassi Junior High books. I thought it would be really good to get into the history of TV tie-in books, since that's what the Degrassi Junior High books are, and we did a little special section about the history of TV novelizations before we did The Kids of Degrassi Street. So I just figured, and at the end, I will do a few Q&A questions from my Instagram story for the podcast Instagram that is at Bruce Mackey Library on Instagram. There are no trigger warnings for this. We're just going to start off with the definition of what a TV tie-in is. It is a work of fiction or other product based on a media property such as a film, video game, television series, board game, website, role-playing, or literary property. Tie-ins are authorized by the owners of the original property and are a form of cross-promotion used primarily to generate additional income from the original property and to promote its visibility. This usually includes books such as novelizations, which we did a whole series on, original novels, which is what the Degrassi Junior High character books are seen as, or story collections. That would be more of like growing up Degrassi, which we will get to after the Degrassi Junior High books, inspired by the property, or republished previously existing books, which is like reprinting. After they did all the original Degrassi Junior High books, they did reprint them and like tried to edit them and give them new covers. That's what this is. Such as the novels on which a media property was based, with artwork or photographs from the property. So that is referring to like if the Pretty Little Liars books were reprinted with covers from the TV show, which they did do, then they are considered media tie-ins after that. The reprints are considered media tie-ins when the covers change. According to publishing industry estimates, about 1 or 2% of the audience of a film or TV show will buy its novelization, making these relatively inexpensively produced works a commercially attractive proposition in the case of blockbuster franchises, although increasingly also a domain of previously established novelizations. Tie-in writing has the disadvantages from the writer's point of view of modest pay, tight deadlines, and no ownership in the intellectual property created. Tie-ins also have a documentary or supplemental character and making of books. So a documentary book would be like Growing Up Degrassi, supplemental character that's these, and making of books would also be like The Mother of All Degrassi, kind of, and like Generation 411 Guide, which we'll get to all of those at a later date. So the Wikipedia is counting novelizations as a tie-in, and I'm not going to go deep into those because we already had that, but the definition is a derivative novel that adapts the story of a work created for another medium, such as film, TV series, comic strip, or video game. It's also counting rebranding as a tie-in. That's when a book gets like a new cover from a TV show. But they define that as a tie-in book linked to a film based on short fiction may be published featuring the adapted story. And the other one that they're counting as tie-ins is expanded universes. That's more of these character books. They define it as tie-in works may also tell new stories in the form of sequels, prequels, and other spin-offs, creating an expanded universe based on the original work. And that's what the whole next season will be about. I also wanted to read a little bit of a New York Times article that was written about a semi newer tie-in book that had come out. This was written on January 4th, 2015, about a Sons of Anarchy book. While I know it's not related to Degrassi at all, I found it very interesting for this topic that kind of helps set the scene for what these tie-in books are currently like. Not super current, but kind of current. The creator of Sons of Anarchy, which recently ended its 7-year run on FX, commissioned a novel to keep its fans engaged. The novel's name is Ratzva. I might be pronouncing that wrong. A new crime novel by Christopher Golden, the vice president of the motorcycle gang, and its sidekicks do 200 pages of gun battles, fist fights, and mayhem. This is following lines of clothing, jewelry, action figures, and other merchandise. The show's creator, Kurt Sutter, said, "With the show ending, how do we keep the world in the consciousness of our fans? It's always a mix of art and commerce. This is one of the latest entries to a flourishing but often unappreciated pocket of the publishing world, tie-in novels. Writers have produced novels based on the terrorism drama called Homeland, the British crime series, or Broadchurch, and much more. Novels are also for long-defunct series, like Buffy and Murder, She Wrote. The 43rd and 44th novels of Murder, She Wrote will come out this year. That's as of 2015, when this article was published. Almost 20 years after it went off the air. For publishers, tie-in books become instant cash cows due to brand recognition and access to huge fan bases for larger media. One of the longest running and most successful tie-in series is the Star Wars novels, which started in 1976 and is still going strong today. A show with 2 million viewers usually sells 1 or 2% of that, which is 20,000 copies in paperback. At the time, Michael Homer, an editor at St. Martin's Press, who acquired the Sons of Anarchy novel, said, "Having that built-in audience, you don't know that everyone's going to show up, but you know that a certain fan will show up." Still, in literary circles, these books have often been ignored or sneered at as mere merchandise rather than art. Max Allan Collins, who has written novelizations such as Saving Private Ryan, said, "They're treated like the lunchbox or the action figure, but lately new writers are flocking to it as a new golden age becomes increasingly significant cultural medium. Rather than summarizing familiar stories, many tie-ins deliver original plot lines and subtle character development that go beyond what fans already know. Mr. Homer said, with the with the quality of some of these stories, I don't know that it's fair to call them literary, but others have tons of depth. The storytelling is beyond anything that's been done before. And because of that, it lends itself well to these novelizations. Lee Goldberg is a novelist and co founder of the International Association of Media Tie in Writers, which is a professional organization with around 250 members. And he said, we're getting more original novels based on existing franchises. Novelizations of the films are often loved more than the actual films. And while the earliest example of a novelization or tie in book that I could find on the Wikipedia was Leave It to Beaver, written by Beverly Cleary in 1960, these tie in books are still happening today. The most recent one that I purchased for my niece on her birthday was The Book of Bill from Gravity Falls. That was released on July 23rd, 2024, and it includes ciphers, puzzles, and a step-by-step guide to overthrowing the world, according to fandom.com. It's deeply cursed, and it is intended for older readers. I probably should have read that before giving it to my 11-year-old niece. But either way, it's written by Bill Cipher himself, and it is a continuation of the Gravity Falls universe. That is just so recent, and it shows the impact of, well, my niece was really happy when she got it, okay? Anyway, on editing me here, I actually should point out that tie-in books are still happening in 2025. There's a new Scooby-Doo tie-in book about the Hex Girls coming out soon. It's called A Rogue Thorn, and it's still on pre-order. It's by Lily Mead. So you should check that out too. April 21st, 2023, a graphic novel about media tie-in books was reprinted. This was actually called Tied In, The Business History and Craft of Media Tie-in Writing by Lee Goldberg, who you will remember as the co-founder of the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers, and his friend Max Allan Collins, who you'll remember from our New York Times article as well. He was a writer of novelizations such as Saving Private Ryan. They also had help from Elizabeth Macy, Donald Bain, Nancy Holder, Craig Cox, David Spencer, Raymond Benson, Brandy Tarvin, and Elena Adams in writing this 246-page graphic novel that was originally published on July 18th, 2010, and Amazon describes it as a unique, groundbreaking collection of lively, informative, and provocative essays and interviews from some of the most acclaimed and best-selling authors of tie-in books and novelizations about what they do and how they do it. Television Obscurities blog described it as Tied In doesn't solely focus on TV tie-ins. It also covers movie novelizations, comic book tie-ins, and computer game tie-ins. that makes it more valuable and more interesting. So, as you can see, these still reign supreme today and have a rich history of helping properties get revenue and structure, which Wikipedia says these are an important part of the revenue stream for any major media release, and both planning and licensing for such works often begins at the earliest stages of creating properties. This is true for Exit Stage Left in particular. I have said before in my recaps and reprints episode that the book Exit Stage Left was actually published before the premiere episode of Kiss Me Steph, which honestly did not shock me when I read the book, because many of the last names were wrong, which is something I'll get into in my next episode when I cover Exit Stage Left. But back to the Wikipedia page, it says tie-ins provide both a way of generating income and a way of satisfying the desires of fans who enthusiastically support a media property. These tie-ins can be free advertising as they create exposure for the franchise. I have to admit, they're correct about that one. I remember one time in particular, I went to Habitat for Humanity thrift store and I found a media tie-in book for a show that I did not know existed at that time. It's the Carmen Sandiego Netflix show. At that time, I didn't have Netflix, so I didn't know that the show existed. But I had known about Carmen Sandiego's original stuff in particular. I just didn't know about the reboot. And I found this Chase Your Own Caper, which is like a choose your own adventure jetpack attack for Carmen Sandiego's Netflix show. And at the bottom it said Netflix now an original series. And I was like, oh, didn't know that existed. So a lot of the time nowadays, the biggest media tie-in books are Choose Your Own Adventure. Inside Out even has one that I found at Kappa's Closet for 10 cents. And it says, what should Riley do? 20 possible endings. You decide the ending. So at some point, I do intend to use these for an episode, but that's just not right now. It will be probably after we finish the Degrassi Junior High series, but I wanted to bring that up. I thought it was very interesting that the Wikipedia says this can help provide an audience and exposure for a show, and it's actually been true for me. I've had that happen. But that's the end of what Wikipedia says, so I will be answering a few questions from the Instagram story because I knew this would be a short episode, and I didn't want it to be too short. I knew we had a few fan questions to get to. So my first question comes from Degrassi Kid. They said, what book would you recommend a Degrassi fan starts with? And honestly, this is the hardest question we could start with ever, because really it depends on the fan. Like, if the fan has a favorite character, such as Joey Jeremiah, I would obviously say start with his book. Like, that just feels the most obvious to me. But if a fan has, a special interest, such as comic books, then I would say start with the extra credit Turning Japanese book. That's the one with Ellie on the cover, where she interns at a comic book company, and JT's side plot is finding a comic book for I think it's like a time capsule box or something, care package, something like that him and Liberty are putting together for their baby after they give it up for adoption. Or if somebody has a special interest in religion, such as myself, I would say start with Shane's character book or Spinner's graphic novel manga book called Missing You, because Shane's parents are ministers, obviously. I don't want to give too much spoilers for that, because that plot line doesn't happen on the TV show. It just happens in the book. I don't want to give that away. But Spinner's plot line is on the TV show. Darcy goes to a church camp and he's going through his Christian phase, but like played out throughout an entire summer. We get to see what happens in between her going on the bus and her coming back and accepting him back in her life. So I feel like it's really a one-to-one basis. My mom had a similar question. She said, what book would you recommend to new people looking to get into the show? And that one was also like, this is kind of tough. If they have a special interest, I would recommend these ones. But like, if they want a guide to the show, I would recommend Growing Up Degrassi or the Generations 411 guide if they're more into TNG. That has more TNG stuff. Or if they're like really into the music business kind of thing, I would recommend Stephen Stone's memoir, which I will get to at some point. Don't worry. Or like if they want to know more about how the show was actually created, I would recommend The Mother of All Degrassi. I would even say like if they want to know more about certain actors, you could recommend their memoirs. Like Anaya Skanofsky has a really, really good one. She played Lucy or Karen on The Kids of Degrassi Street. If you're more of a way classic fan like myself, her memoir is really, really good. It doesn't focus a lot on Degrassi, so that might be kind of upsetting to some people, but her life was just very interesting with her parents and how she navigated like between rich and poor and black and white. It's very intriguing to me and relatable. It's called The Girl in the Middle, Growing Up Between Black and White, Rich and Poor. So I basically just described it by using the title, but that wasn't what I was trying to do. It just kind of happened. But those are the books I would really recommend for those like specific situations. Honestly, it's really hard to recommend books to like random strangers that I've never met. I haven't read every single Degrassi book yet. Mostly, I haven't read all the Degrassi Junior High character books. I did read the Degrassi 4011 Generations Guide, but it's been a while and I haven't read Growing Up Degrassi yet. So it's hard to know what to recommend to people when you don't know like their interests and what they like about the show or what characters they're into and what they're looking for in this experience. Sadly, there isn't a book for every fan out there. They stopped doing the books after Marco's graphic novel, which like is around season six-ish. So if you want a book for after that season, I would say go to fan fiction. Fanfics are totally valid if you want a expanded universe of season like 6 through the rest of the show on like Wattpad and AO3. They totally count as valid reading, and a lot of great authors have gotten their start writing fanfic, such as our wonderful guest Sawyer Benjamin. We all remember him. And like the New York Times article said, defunct series can be picked up in tie-in books. So I would love to see that happen for Degrassi. I have an idea in my mind of like, oh, if they wanted to reboot the series right now and do just books as a reboot, I would love to see it. I think it would go really, really well. I'd love to see like Zoe and Rasha get married and adopt an older kid who's like Emma's age when she's in TNG, and that kid starts going to Degrassi and they get bullied for having lesbian moms, that kind of a thing. Or maybe they run into a Becky Baker kind of situation where they are like, people start boycotting their attendance to Degrassi because of their lesbian moms. That could be really interesting. This is just really tailored to me and like my interest in religion and how much I enjoy Becky Baker in particular's character arc. It's very similar to how I feel about like Darcy would never do this, so I think it'd be really interesting to see like a Becky Baker type, not her in particular, but you know the archetype, like start boycotting the adopted child of two lesbian moms going to Degrassi, and like a Darcy type being like, it's their free will. Like they can't decide who they're adopted by, and they're just making the best of it, and like, they're loved. At least they're loved and not thrown around in the foster system or in an abusive home, because that could happen. It could be really interesting to see that. We don't really have a whole lot of adoption storylines in Degrassi. Like the main one that you could think of is Holly J, and that was so much more focused on her liver disease or kidney, whatever it was, and not really focused on her reaction to adoption. And it didn't show her adoption process and her adjusting to a new home, which could be really interesting and relatable for a lot of people. So that was just a long way of saying. So, in all, I can't really give a blanket recommendation to like everyone, and I feel like that's what most people would expect me to say anyway. I'm often very indecisive. I got a few more questions here, so I'm going to move on to those. But thank you, Jocelyn and my mom, for those two. The next one is coming from a fan named Jessica. She asked, "What is your favorite Degrassi book?" And truly, I don't have one. It depends on my mood, it depends on what I'm looking for. I haven't read them all yet, so I don't know. But I will say the one that impacted me the most, the one that like shocked me the most. So the one that shocked me the most was Shane's. I really didn't expect to feel sympathy for him after reading it. When I first read it, it was because I had read the Spike book and got so irritated at him and annoyed by him. I was like, okay, I need to hear out his side because otherwise I'm just going to end up hating him. And I don't want to hate him. I don't ever want to hate any character. I want to see everyone's side. Even Rick Murray, I want to see his side and try to understand where they're coming from. And because I know that each person is valid, each person has their own experience, and these are teenagers. They're not fully formed in the brain. They don't come up with the best decisions. They don't think through a whole lot of things. I've been there. I've done things that I look back on and I'm like, oh, I should have done this instead. So I wanted to read Shane's character book. I was like looking for his perspective, and I ended up feeling so much sympathy for him. I don't want to spoil why, but he just gets a bad rep from people who don't fully look at his perspective and do like a deep dive on his upbringing and life experience. Also, if you want to read Shane's book, I would highly recommend going to the Degrassi Kid Patreon page and buying their Shane book club package. You can like do your own self-led book club that they made, and it's really cool. It comes with a downloadable bookmark, and it has like a little diploma that you can print out and put your name on when you're all done. And it's full of introspective questions, and I just highly recommend it. It's like $8 American dollars. Oh, this is not an ad. Like, I kind of helped them a little bit making it, but I don't make any money from that, and this is not an ad. They're not asking me to do this. They don't know I'm doing it, but I will be using it when I do my Shane episode, so I highly recommend checking it out and filling it out yourself ahead of time. And also, they're just really great at making book clubs. So, I will say Shane's book shocked me the most for those reasons, but I feel like the one that I learned the most from, and it also really, really shocked me, was Snake's character book. Learning so much about, and this is like in particular to probably Degrassi Kids book club experience. I learned so much about the 80s and the AIDS epidemic and kind of the perspective of what teenagers would be hearing from their parents about AIDS and gay people in particular. And gay guys, like gay men, really. I would have loved to see and I might still if I see it in another Degrassi Junior High book, like, I don't know, maybe. But seeing the perspective of, like, a gay woman coming out to their family, and because they don't often, like, they didn't really get AIDS, that wasn't really their thing. They often donated their blood to, like, blood banks for AIDS and things like that instead. So I just feel like that would be a different experience that I would love to see. But yeah, Snake's character book really shocked me, and I love reading it every time. I've read it like 3 or 4 times now, and it never disappoints. It never lets me down. It always shocks me, the honesty of it, and I wish we got to see more of the impact of that story on Snake's character on screen. So, yeah, I don't really have a favorite book, though, a favorite Degrassi book. I think this might change after I read more of them. Like, I would love to do these questions again at the end of Degrassi Junior High character books, or at the end of maybe a year from now. Like, a year from now, I would love to do these questions again. Next year in July, do these questions again and see what has changed. And then the last one I got was, how did you find out about Degrassi books? This question is from Andrew. Thank you so much for your question. I found out about Degrassi books from the Degrassi Kid podcast. They love hearing this answer. I'm shocked they didn't ask this question just to hear this answer again. But it was like their second episode. I had just found them. I was walking my dog listening to, like, I had just finished a Degrassi rewatch podcast, and I wanted more Degrassi in my life, but I did not want more Degrassi rewatch podcasts. I was experiencing the burnout of those. So I just searched Degrassi podcasts on Spotify and saw Degrassi Kid podcast, and the first episode was like information about the HBO Max reboot that was supposed to happen. Rest in peace to the HBO Max reboot that never happened. And then the second episode, they were talking about like how they started building their collection and the impact of building their collection, like what that meant to them. And it was like just the quickest mention of like 2 words. They were like, oh yeah, I had some Degrassi shirts and some box sets and a few books, and I like was really enjoying collecting and growing the fandom. And they were talking about the impact of that on them. And like just the word like a few books, my brain was like, wait, Degrassi books? And I like rushed inside and sat in the recliner and was like Googling Degrassi books, and like the whole Degrassi Junior High collection popped up. And a few of them were like a bit too expensive, so I hopped over to Thrift Books. Not an ad, not a partnership, but most of my Degrassi books are from thriftbooks.com or eBay. Not a partnership or an ad on either one, but I highly recommend them if you are looking for Degrassi books and you're like on a budget. If you're not on a budget, then I will recommend going to Formac Lormer because we should let them know that the audience for these books still exists. And, like, maybe they'd write a few more. You never know. Like, I'd be down for that. I would be down for reprints of the Kids of Degrassi Street books that are, like, actual remakes that, like, actually transform things and don't just give them a new cover. That's a different topic for a different day. I would love to do an episode on that. But, yeah, I just, like, went and got the cheapest Degrassi book I could find and the most expensive on the same day. Well, actually not the most expensive. The most expensive one I have is like $52. But it was like the second most expensive. It was a Degrassi Talks book. It was like $36. But that includes shipping. So that's like not too shabby, actually, for Degrassi Talks books. Like, that's not horrible. I've seen them go for way more. But that was on the same day I bought Lisa Makes the Headlines and Degrassi Talks Sexuality and, like, started saving up for, like, Griff Gets a Hand and the Degrassi Generations 411 Guide. Those were the first 4 Degrassi books I bought, and I bought them all within a 2-month period. I remember this very vividly. Like, I saw all 4 of them, and I was like, okay, right now I can afford Lisa Makes the Headlines and Degrassi Talks Sexuality. I can't afford all 4. I could afford, like, maybe I could have afforded, like, Lisa Makes the Headlines, Griff Makes a Date, and, like, or Griff Gets a Hand, and the 411 Generations Guide. I could have afforded all 3 of those at the same time. But I was like, I've never even heard of Kids of Degrassi Street at that point. But I still was like, I'll buy this Lisa Makes the Headlines book. It looks really, really interesting. And I'll put Griff Gets a Hand, like, on the back burner and wait, like, a few weeks. And I had heard of Degrassi Talks a little bit. And I hadn't watched it yet, but, like, I had heard it was, like, a talk show of, like, the Degrassi Junior High kids, because at that point I had watched Degrassi Junior High, interviewing people about, like, topics on the show, but I hadn't watched any of the videos, I hadn't read the book yet, like, I didn't know anything beyond the concept, and I was like, yeah, I'll buy this book, it looks really interesting. It was, like, a few days before Pride Month, I think, when it showed up, but I think it was 2 months before Pride when I decided to buy it. So it did take a long time to get here, but it was worth it. And yeah, I just was enamored. I am an avid reader from, like, as long as I can remember. And the second I saw Degrassi, I was, like, entranced. It was, like, in the back of my mind from the second I saw it. Even though I didn't fully know what it was, I was obsessed. So Degrassi Books was like, yeah, obviously, that's me. Like, I don't need to know what it's about. Like, I don't need to know what Kids of Degrassi Street is to know that I want this book because it's a Degrassi book. Don't need to know anything else. And at that time, I was like, what if this isn't even Degrassi? Like, it says Degrassi on it, but is this really what they're talking about? So I did message Jocelyn and I was like, hey, I think I found a Degrassi book. And they were like, yeah, that's one of them. That's a good one. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'll take your word for it. And it was the first Degrassi book I ever read. And then I, like, instantly went to go watch the episode. And I didn't watch any of the other Kids of Degrassi Street episodes before watching that one. And I was like, oh, okay. So after that, I did start to Google, like, the history of Degrassi, Bruce Mackey, and, like, I didn't make some movie. Finding out that was based on a book really intrigued me and got me more excited about the Kids of Degrassi Street in general, like, as a whole. And that like really started my journey after that. It was a whirlwind. Like that's how I got here. And no regrets. I absolutely love all of them. I started collecting like one by one after that, like the cheapest ones I could find a lot of the time. Sometimes I would buy a new one, but it was like very rare. I love used books. Those are like a main thing for me. I like think that they have more stories to tell when they're used, as much of a cliche as that might sound, you know? But like I love getting a used book and it'll have like one of those library card holders in the back. I absolutely love that. Or like when it has a library card in it, or if someone like leaves a bookmark or a receipt or something in the pages that they were like using as a bookmark, that like I don't know, like it satisfies me. It makes me feel happy. It makes me feel excited. It makes me feel like this book was loved, and it gets me like primed to have a good time because I'm like, oh yeah, somebody else really enjoyed this. Somebody else had a really good time with this, and that makes me feel like I probably will too. So that's like one of the main reasons I often buy used books, or just because like I see it at a thrift store. Sadly, I've never seen a Degrassi book at a thrift store, but I'm not giving up hope. One of these days it'll happen, even though I'm like in South Carolina. I still like have hope that this will happen one day. One of these days I'll just find a Degrassi book at a thrift store. I just know it's going to happen. Mark my word. But yeah, those are the questions that people asked me. Thank you so much for submitting them. And I'm really excited to get into the Degrassi Junior High books. And for the Degrassi Junior High books, I am switching up the format a little bit. This might start off a little bit rocky because it's so experimental for me. But if you have enjoyed my interview episodes, I have done like 5 of them so far, and you would like to be interviewed, I am looking for guests for my Degrassi Junior High episodes. I'm going to like interview guests and put those interviews around the middle of an episode about the book. The beginning before that will be background information on the book and the author and like the publication date, just the general information that I think is still important to remember. I would love to have different guests for every episode if I can. I would love to have multiple guests. I would never interview 2 people at the same time, like on the same video call, but I would have like one person be first in the episode and then another person be right after that. I would love to do multiple interviews for each book. And if you would like to be on an episode, please reach out to the podcast Instagram page. That is at Bruce Mackey Library on Instagram. And you can also find me on Degrassi Kid Discord. I made a post in the projects and promos page on Degrassi Kid Discord looking for guests. If you do not have a copy of a book, but you would like to be on that book's episode, do not worry. I have every single book, and I can scan my book using an app on my phone and send you a PDF version of that book for free to your email address, the same one that you would use for Zoom. So I would love to help you out with reading these books and chatting with me. I think it would be tons of fun to build a community and have like little book clubs kind of a deal. It would be tons of fun. We will continue to go in publication order. So if you want to do one of the later books, but I don't respond to you for a while, please do not feel discouraged. It is just because I am going in the publication order, and I will get to you, I promise. I do plan to continue doing 1 episode a month, so it will take a while, but I promise you I will get to you. And I'm just so excited for this. I think that these books lead more conversations than the Kids of Degrassi Street books, which is why I did not do interviews for those. And I'm just so excited to see where this leads us. So if you would like to be a guest on those episodes, it does require reading the book, but they're super fun. They're very short. They're like less than 200 pages each, to be honest. And you can let me know that you would like to be a guest by going to the podcast Instagram page, again at Bruce Mackey Library on Instagram. And I'll see you next time. Bye, readers.